Hey guys, welcome back to the From Corner to Corner podcast. We are in a remote location tonight. We could not get to the backroom studios this week or tonight because we had a snowstorm come through. So we got a little bit different look this evening. We are with Sam Stackhouse. He is a independent wrestler out of Oklahoma.
Yes, sir.
Sam, how you doing this evening?
Doing good. How you doing?
Good, and we appreciate
we got a little bit of that snow, but not anything like that.
Well, this is our second snowstorm in the past week. Last week it was a little bit more intense, but this one hopefully won't be as bad. But
I think it was like 75 degrees here the other day, and then now it's like 16 or something outside. It gets crazy here sometimes. You never know.
We thought Kentucky's the only place.
No, it gets pretty crazy here.
Awesome. Well, you said you're from a small town, but you're kind of close to Tulsa. That was kind of your location.
Yeah, Tulsa's the biggest. I mean, I'm not far outside of Tulsa, but it's basically Tulsa's where I live at. Yeah.
Nice, awesome. Well, I tell you what, we'll just jump right into it, right? I mean, let's talk a little bit about Sam. What on earth made you want to be a wrestler?
Man, I watched it when I was a kid. Like, I think that one of the first pay-per-views I ever watched was I think the first ECW pay-per-view was the first pay-per-view I ever saw. So I saw that before I saw the WWE pay-per-view. And my brother got me into it, and then I was just sold on the moment I saw it. I don't know. I can't even pinpoint what it was. I think it might have been everything. Matter of fact, just everything about it. I was just hooked from that moment on. So ever since then, wrestling has been a big part of my life since then.
Well, the fact that he said ECW is why we know that he does what he does, right?
Right.
So Neil's the one that caught your attention, or you caught Neil's attention. Neil, what was it that you saw?
It was the dive out of the ring on the guy through the table that I saw on TikTok, and I went to Sean. I was like, we got to talk to this guy because I think that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, we followed you on Facebook. Mm-hmm. So we see some of your videos on Facebook. And then maybe a week or so ago, you had a video posted up and said, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I'm looking at it, and you've got a handful of thumbtacks.
Yeah.
And your hand is just shaking like this. And I was like, oh, my God, I can feel the pain.
It wasn't a good day at the office, I guess. That was a bad night.
So are you always doing the extreme matches? Is that kind of what your forte is? Or
no. That was like things that a lot of people don't see on the clips or whatever. There's a lot of those, because I live in Oklahoma anyway, so we can't really do a lot of stuff here, because basically me and my best friend, we are the most, I guess, the hardcore people in Oklahoma, I guess. But we've taken it to the limit of what you can do, because thumbtacks, it was a few years ago, I had to write a letter to the commission and stuff to even be able to use the thumbtacks. So it's not it's crazy here. I had to send an email. It was the commission here. We can't do light tubes. We're not supposed to use fire, but we've done the fireballs and stuff before. But no, I've never done the hardcore stuff I've done. I'm not gonna get here on and compare myself to any of these deathmatch people, because it's not anything compared to what they've done. I've taken some thumbtacks in the face and some fireball in the face and thumbtacks in the hands and in the back and everywhere else, but these guys are jumping off of 20-foot things. I'm not known for any of that stuff. So.
Nice.
Now, Sam, I have to ask, because you talked about the thumbtacks. There's no way, that always hurts, right? There's no way that it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in wrestling because everyone's smart to wrestling and everything. So I'm not gonna go into that. But there's certain things that you just gotta. I mean, it is what it is. You can't fake a chair. You don't a chair is a chair.
Right.
They may make lighter chairs or something like that I'm not aware of. But anytime I've ever had a chair, it was just a chair someone grabbed. So, there's certain things that you can't. Concrete's concrete. When you land on it, there's not much you can do about it.
Right.
Well, the physical toll. I mean, like you said. I mean, everybody has their own opinion about wrestling, but the physicality and the physical toll that your bodies take is real. Right.
Yeah. I was talking to a guy the other day, and we were talking about that, because we were talking about how a lot of people think they don't understand for the wrestlers, just because the show's over or the bell's rung, it's not over. because I guarantee you that wrestler is going to be filling that match for at least 3 or 4 days, and sometimes even more. Because I hurt my ankle last month, and it's still a little tender, you know. So, and like there's guys walking around here with bumps and bruises. Like I was watching I don't know if you guys watched, but the GCW pay-per-views this past weekend. Alex Colon had a death match on Friday, and then turned around and did another one the very next night on pay-per-view too. So, and like they're having matches that it take me, if I'm being realistic, it take me weeks probably to recuperate from, but they're right back at the next night. Yeah, like I said, people don't understand that, but Alex Colon's going to be feeling that for his next probably 4 or 5, and also like those guys are at the Hammerstein next week. It's the biggest show of their lives the week before, but they're still not one match took the night off. Like every match, they still gave 100%, just like it wasn't, you know, like the Hammerstein's not coming next week. It's crazy.
Well, and I mean, for a lot of wrestlers, the Hammerstein is MSG. I mean, it is the mecca. So
it also happens to be right around the corner from MSG.
Right.
Too.
I mean, they're next door neighbors.
Yeah.
But for guys who haven't been able to, main event or wrestle in Madison Square Gardens, the Hammerstein Ballroom is the equivalent. Like it's the same thing, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, those guys they're gonna absolutely kill it. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be on the show, but it'd be maybe next time, hopefully. Because I just got in with GCW, so I'm just happy to be involved on it. Anytime they want me, I'm happy to be there.
Well, and that my next question is about GCW. They have a rabid fan base. Just a fan base that just and for the common wrestling fan, they probably don't understand a lot of GCW. I hear all the time, well, why would anybody want to do the deathmatch stuff, and why would anybody want to do this and that? I don't know because I've never done it. That's what I tell them.
I'm gonna tell you, I'm new to crowds like that because like I've been wrestling for almost 12 years now, and most of it was spent in Oklahoma, which is like just your normal crowd.
Right.
And because of the spot that you talked about earlier on TikTok, and because of some other spots that went crazy, that's the whole reason I got to GCW anyways, because they saw some of that stuff, so they reached out to me, and now every time they call me, it's been crazy because I did the stuff in Vegas with Cardona, and like I can answer the question you just asked, like how do they do, or why would they want to do that stuff?
Right.
Like that crowd, like when I did the few things that I got to do in front of them, like you could have shot me and I wouldn't have felt it. Like it was insane to have, like there was like 1,000 people there, and all of them were up, and all of them were, I mean, they were jumping around, hugging each other, like high-fiving each other because of something that we were doing,
Right.
So I mean, like I said, they could have shot me and I wouldn't have felt it.
Right. Well, and I mean, sorry, Sean, you can see the fan base. I mean, when Cardona, you just talked about him, he showed up and attacked Gage under the hood, took his hood off. The fans automatically turned on him. Oh, yeah. He was hated, and like he's built his new character off that.
Oh, he's doing good. Yeah.
But it all started off him making an appearance at GCW.
Oh yeah. I mean, him and GCW was a partnership made in heaven, because obviously he's elevated GCW quite a bit, because I mean he's a huge person in the business, so he's elevated them. But also it gave him a chance to not be forgotten whenever because he got released and everything, and now he's like. I think there was something that he got like he was the #1 indie wrestler now or something like that he got voted for that or something like that. And a lot of that is due to GCW, because he came to GCW, and like I said, so they've helped each other out. So it was kind of a match made in heaven in that respect, I guess.
Well, and Matt's doing some of the best work that he's ever done before. And it just shows you the talent. We saw him along with some other former WWE guys at Wrestlecade. And it just shows you the talent that they have. Yeah. And a lot of times the machine itself covers up the ability of what these people actually have.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, like to a certain extent, I get it, because there's only so much TV time, and you got to go with the bigger people. So it's hard to bring up the other people, but that's the good thing about wrestling now, is because now there's other places to go, so like, now a wrestler's dream might not be WB. Back in the day, and by back in the day I mean like 2 years ago, if an indie wrestler was caught on video talking about, I don't want to go to WB, WB sucks, blah blah blah, it was clearly because they either knew they weren't going to ever be there, or they were just bitter about it. But now if someone says, hey, I don't want to go to WWE, I want to go to AEW, or I want to go to GCW or Ring of Honor when they come back, or Impact.
Right.
Japan now is huge. I mean, there's wrestling all over the world now. So that's a good thing about now, is now there's room for everybody basically. So that's because now, like, just think about it, you got a bunch of indie wrestlers that are about to headline at Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City next week.
Right.
And that's the landscape of wrestling that we live in now, that's possible. And I know that, like, Ring of Honor's ran there a few times, but I mean, Ring of Honor had a whole lot more stuff back in them than like a GCW does. You know what I'm saying? Like that, like they got there just off of the fans, basically. Like the fans have blown this stuff up so much that they can sell out a place like that in 36 hours. And that's crazy. I don't think Ring of Honor sold out that fast. I mean, I don't know. I might be wrong, but I don't know. I'm biased, obviously.
Yeah. Hey, I have a question for you. Is FTR the team that answers the challenge from the Briscoes on Saturday?
Hey,
in your opinion,
that'd be insane. I mean, who else can it be? Because I was just talking to my buddy about this. Because at the end of the day, I'm a wrestler, but also at the end of the day, I love pro wrestling.
Right.
So I don't care if it makes me sound like it. I don't care what makes me sound like. At the end of the day, I love wrestling. I love to wrestle. But I mean, I have no problem sitting back and watching the show and getting into it. And I don't know who else. I don't know what other team could it be? There's no other team that could keep that. I mean, because they've been doing all these promos saying how they're the best tag team and no one can hang with them. I don't know who else it would be.
Right.
And I'm kind of worried that if it's not them, they're gonna get booed. Whoever it is going to get booed out of the building. Because it's got to be somebody big. Like
they definitely set it up.
It's all, like, it's not quite to the level, but it's almost to the level. Like if CM Punk didn't come out that one night in September, that place was going to get burnt to the ground.
100%.
We've talked about that several times on the podcast. It was like, like, of course, Neil talked about it one time on the show. He's like, the way they should have done that is hit Punk's music, and then MJF should have walked
for
out.
Sure, man.
That place would have went nuts.
Oh my goodness!
And then later on in the show, bring Punk out.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. That place was going crazy before the music ever hit.
Yeah.
And there was no way they was keeping that secret.
It would have been like, what was that year that Rey Mysterio was 30 in the Rumble, and they booed him out of the building because everybody wanted to be Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah.
I did. So hopefully nothing like that happens next weekend. But it's got to be them. And can you imagine that match? Because I'm pretty sure that match has never happened before.
Well, and I'm gonna guess it would probably be the first of a few times that we're gonna see these guys.
Oh, for sure. That match is money. Anywhere you take it, they can do it. They can do it in GCW, AEW. They can take that. They can take that match anywhere, and that match is gonna be money.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so one of the other questions you mentioned the GCW. But you also said like in our pre-interview that you work with some other promotions. What are some of those other promotions?
I got Loco Wrestling down in Houston.
Okay.
There's Wrestle Rave that's also in Houston. World Class Pro Wrestling is in Dallas, and then back home in Oklahoma we got Core Pro Wrestling, which is right down the road from me, which is very nice. And then we have Wrestling for a Cause, which is basically Wrestling for a Cause is where I've been at for my entire since 2012 or 13, I guess it's been, because they just had their 10-year anniversary. So since 2002. Well, I've been there since I was there at the first show, but that's a whole big old story about how, like, I was told I wasn't good enough to get on the show and everything, and then I finally got on the show type of situation. So I've been there since the very beginning. So that's where I spent the majority of my career is Wrestling for a Cause. And the whole thing with that is, like, every show is for a family, like a child. Basically, they fight childhood cancer. So every show, all the proceeds go to a different family, and all the money goes to them. They use it for medical expenses, whatever they need to use, whatever they need to use it for. But I mean, we've raised, I think the last time, I think it was close to like $200,000, something like that over the past 10 years. So because I mean, every show is a few $1,000s, and we've been. I mean, there was a time where we were running every 2 weeks for a little bit. So.
Wow.
And that was my biggest part of my career is doing that.
And that's the name of the actual promotion, Wrestling for a Cause?
Yeah, Wrestling for a Cause, WFC. Yeah.
Nice.
Out of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Nice. Well, that's fantastic.
WFC.
I had not heard about them before, but
they're
fantastic.
Because they don't. We did all that without, like, we didn't have to bring in names and do pay-per-views and all that stuff. Like, we did all that just a bunch of local Oklahoma people. Like sometimes, like people from Texas have come up, and like Kansas, and like from the surrounding states have come in. But I mean, the biggest names they brought in like Brutal Bob Evans. I think next month, the Last Real Man guy from Ring of Honor,
Silas Young.
They've got him coming in. The NWA heavyweight champion. He works with us a lot. I mean, it was before he went back to Ring of Honor. Why he went? But I mean, he's supposed to come back sometime soon. So hopefully they get that situated and everything. But yeah, WFC's been killing it for 10 years, doing great stuff here. And yeah, like I said, it's not the biggest well known, like it's not worldwide known or anything like that. But like we've done a lot of good. Just like I said, a bunch of Oklahoma boys just trying to do the best for some families, and it's worked out pretty good.
And bravo, right onto that, man. That's awesome.
But that sparks my thought. I wrote that down because that might be somebody that we need to reach out to.
For sure. Oh yeah, because the promoter of that, his name is Tim Rockwell. He's well spoken. So I mean, he'd be a lot better person to tell you about him and articulate everything than I am, because I'm just a wrestler at the end of the day. So he's been there in the trenches and doing all the stuff. So
yeah.
So for our fans that have never seen Sam Stackhouse on a card or on a video, when they watch a Sam Stackhouse match, what can they expect?
Well, I mean, basically my whole thing is you expect the unexpected,
right?
Because I've never ever wrestled like a traditional big guy, because I've always been like, my whole theory is I've always been able to do flips and like run and faster than most big people can, and do all like stuff that I probably shouldn't be able to do or try to do in the first place. And I've always been able to do it. So I just, I've always that's been a kind of a double-edged sword, because in one way that's the whole reason that I'm where I'm at right now. But the second way, it's also kind of the reason it took me as long as it did to get here.
Right.
Because a lot of promoters and stuff have had a problem with it. I've been told to dumb it down and stuff like that, and not do the stuff and not give it away or whatever. And it's crazy. Like I as a wrestling fan, I'm trying to see, like, it's just like any other transaction. Like I'm giving you my attention and a lot of times money, time, everything else. So the least you could do is, show me what you got. So
right.
That's what you can always expect to be surprised. And I don't care if there's 2 people there or 2,000 or 20,000 or 20 million watching at home. You're gonna there's not different levels of Sam Stackhouse. Every time I go in that ring, I go out there and I give it my all, and I try to make sure that even if I'm not the most well-known person on the show, or I might not even be the best wrestler on the show, because generally I'm not. I'm just lucky. I'm just happy to be involved. But when I get these opportunities, I try to make sure that at least somebody in that crowd remembers me when they leave.
Well, and being a bigger guy with athletic skill, you're going to get a lot of the oohs and the ahs that other people won't, right? Because they're not expecting it. If they've never seen you wrestle before, they're not going to expect you to do that kind of stuff. But when you said that whole dumb it down thing and try to like be like more of a big man, it popped in the back of my mind. I've seen interviews before from the Big Show and from Mark Henry that were told exactly the same thing. Both those guys, when they first started wrestling, were uber athletes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Big Show, when he was in WCW, he could go. I mean, he was very athletic, and he wanted to do some of that stuff. And the bigger guys and the promoters and stuff would say, look, you have to be more of a big man. And that was hard for him and for Mark Henry both. So, I say bravo to you, man. If you can do the athletic moves and you can do that, because to be honest with you, that would catch my attention, right? I mean, any big guy can go in there and push people around and do the blocks and grab their hand and choke.
That's what I'm saying. Anybody can do that stuff.
Anybody can do that.
I don't want to be anybody,
Yeah. So I think it's fantastic, because I mean, like I said, the whole reason that we even contacted you was your move that you went through the ropes. So I mean,
exactly, yeah.
If you're in the ring,
that's what started a lot of the stuff, because then people saw that, and then they started seeing the other stuff, and everybody's like, "Oh snap, this new guy's crazy," and that's what also makes me laugh too, because like I haven't changed anything. Like I said, I've done the same stuff since day one back in 2009 when I started. I hadn't figured out how to do the moonsault and all that stuff by then, but I was still like, I've been doing that spinning heel kicks and all that stuff since like day one. And like I've been doing that dive for probably 7-8 years. I've been doing the moonsault for 6-7 years. So like like I said, I've been doing this stuff in front of 2 people, and now I just get to do it in front of more people now every so often. So I'm living the dream. I can't complain about anything. But that's another thing that I love about wrestling too, is like you can't, wrestling is so diverse, and there's like, I've always had this mentality that there's a place in wrestling for everybody, because obviously not everybody, like you were talking main event Madison Square Garden, not everyone's going to do that. You know, not everyone's going to be on Monday Night Raw or AEW Dynamite or Ring of Honor. Not everyone's going to make it there. There's a place in wrestling for everybody. There's a place for that guy that's got 4 or 5 kids and only wants to wrestle once a month because he just loves wrestling. There's a place for that guy. But there's also a place for the guy who sleeps in his car and just travels all over the place and does nothing but wrestles and eats, sleeps, and breathes wrestling. There's a place for that guy, and there's a place for everybody in between. And there's a place for big guys who want to wrestle like little dudes, and there's a place for little dudes who want to body slam and F5 people and do whatever they want. Like, there's a place for everything, And that's the best thing about wrestling. One of the best things about wrestling. There's a lot of good stuff about wrestling.
Well, I mean, I definitely can tell that you're passionate about it, and that's fantastic, because, I mean, of all the interviews we've done so far, I mean, you're definitely, like into it. Like, I can tell that being a wrestler and wrestling for fans excites you tremendously. And
my whole theory is I know what wrestling is like. Wrestling makes me feel this way. Yeah. And then on top of that, I know that there's people in this world that I've made feel this way. And that's everything. Because now, like at the end of the day, we're not here for long. We don't not very many people make huge impacts in this world. So if I can make a little impact in this world, like I said, if I can make somebody feel about wrestling like I feel, and I've had people tell me that I've made them feel that way. So I mean, that's good enough for me. If I couldn't wrestle another match or anything, I've made it 10 times further than back in 2009 when little 17-year-old me started training. I've made it obviously I had big dreams, but realistically, I've made it 10 times further than I ever thought I was going to make it. Yeah. So everything here is just gravy.
Well, and me and Neil both are lifelong fans of wrestling. Yeah. I mean, for as long as I can remember, I've been a wrestling fan. And that's one of the reasons why we ultimately started this podcast, is because we're fans and we're like, why not? I mean, everybody else does a YouTube or a YouTube channel or a podcast. Why not? So, I mean, we have a little bit different niche with our regular podcast stuff, but, we wanted to talk to you, the independent guys. Yep. And the one thing that has been consistent in all of the interviews that we've done is the independent fans are a different breed.
Oh, for sure.
And that's what caught our attention by going to Wrestlecade those couple of times and seeing some independent shows. You sit back and you watch these fans, and it brings back the memories to me of when I was a kid watching Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett, and they'd come out and they'd antagonize the fans and stuff, and the fans would give it right back to them. Oh, yeah. And you get that with indie wrestling. You don't see that on WWE.
Well, no, there's a one.
Not always with AEW.
Yeah. Well, like when you make the crossover from like where the more live focused, where it's TV focused, when you get into TV, there's a separation, because when they're on TV, a lot of times they're told like you're not allowed to interact with the crowd, because the live crowd isn't really the crowd. I mean, which I get it also, because if you got to pick between 5,000 people in an arena or 2 million people watching on their TV screens, obviously you're going to pick the 2 million people. But also, like, if you don't cater to the 5,000 people or whatever that's in each building you're in 2 or 3 times a week or whatever, then that 2 million people that watch at home are going to start dwindling down, because the only reason that the people that watch at home is because that once or twice a year when WWE comes through town, they get to go there and they get to experience live and stuff like that. If it wasn't for live shows and not wrestling, like if it ever goes to just TV wrestling, then wrestling is going to be in trouble. Yeah, because and plus the indies are the lifeblood of WWE and everywhere else, whether they want to admit it or not. Right. Because dang near every single person that's in WWE right now was on the indies at one point.
Right.
Yep. Even Cena wrestled on the indies at one point. I'm sure. Was it Brock? Or not? Well, I don't know if Brock did. I mean, technically he was at OVW, so I guess that's kind of. But I mean, all the biggest stars, most of the big stars there now. Seth Rollins was the number 1 indie guy for a little bit. You know, Kevin Owens, they got Generico. I mean, all these guys there, you know. So that's the indies are important. But I'm glad that you guys noticed that because and the indie fans, I brought out that whole thing and I got sidetracked like I do. I get hit in the head a lot. That's my excuse. But I was watching. My buddy gave me some of his old wrestling DVDs, and I was watching the Rise and Fall of VCW, and they were talking about how important the fans were and how like even before the internet, like these fans back in the day knew every single thing about these wrestlers, and that was just from tape trading and stuff like that. So now imagine how much it is with these fans who are like obsessive fans anyways, and I don't mean obsessive in a bad way. Right. I mean, love what you love. You know what I'm saying? Like if you love wrestling, you love wrestling. I've got wrestling stuff all over this place. But like it was because of those fans that ECW was successful anyways. And like that's the connection that all the indies have, because if you go to an indie show, there's a chance that you might get to talk to the guy that's in the ring at the merchandise table. There's a chance you might run into him in a restaurant after the show type thing. That stuff you don't get to feel that when you're at a big WB show, because you know usually those guys, as soon as their match is over, they're on their way to the airport and there's no, and plus they're not allowed to really interact and everything while the cameras are going, because that's why they do those like after the show main event things, because then they're allowed to interact with the fans and everything. Right. And that's what wrestling is. It's interaction. If we lose that, then I don't know what we're going to do.
Right. And you know, Sam, you're 100% accurate on that. Yeah. You know, to play off what you said a minute ago about Sam Stackhouse was a dreamer when he started as a teenager training. What are some of your dreams and goals? What would Sam Stackhouse like to see his career go to? What levels?
I mean, I want it to go as far as it can go. Right. I mean, I would obviously I would not be upset if 25 years from now I'm accepting a Hall of Fame trophy or something like, you know. I mean,
we wouldn't be upset either.
Yeah, the stars the limit, or the sky's the limit, I guess they say. You know, I've always had big, because you always have to have big dreams anyways to do this, because at the end of the day, you're literally tricking your brain into hurting yourself. So like you've got to have big dreams. So yeah, like obviously I want to go to WWE. I'd go to AEW. Like I just to be able to say that I signed a contract somewhere as a wrestler. I mean, obviously that is gigantic. I mean, that's a gigantic thing, because 98.9% of wrestlers don't get to feel that.
Right.
So obviously that's a dream. But I mean, AEW, like my I guess goals, more like realistic goals that I want to achieve is obviously I'd like to get on like an AEW dark match. I want to get on all the GCW shows. Like I want to wrestle at the Showboat in New Jersey, because once you wrestle at the Showboat in New Jersey, then you're a GCW guy. And I've been watching GCW since like 2016. Yeah. So obviously that's why, like that's a dream. And then just being able to do this full time, like being able to, because I'm almost there. Like I got to quit my like real job, because I'm normally a truck driver. I don't have to do that right now, so that's cool. So now I just got a job at a restaurant now, so I'm off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So now I can wrestle, and like I'm filling up. Like I had to go buy a new date book. Like it's just insane. It's all because of the fans. I'm just a guy, like a small town guy from Oklahoma. I've been on the front page of the newspaper in my local town. But I mean, you know, like, so all this stuff is just, it's insane. So all that to bring it back, like my dreams, the dreams I originally had, realistic dreams, they got surpassed a long time ago. So every day, every time something happens, we're looking for what's next, what's bigger, you know?
Well, it sounds like GCW it might be that first big step, right?
Oh, it definitely. I mean,
that's definitely the biggest promotion that you've started to work with, and once you start, man, I tell you what, if the fans fall in love with Sam Stackhouse on GCW, then the sky is the limit. You know,
that's exactly what's happened, and that's insane to me, because the whole basically how it happened is they came to Texas. And I showed up to that show just to meet everybody. I did not plan on wrestling, didn't plan on anything. Up to that point, just as of that was in July, because it was like 2 days before my birthday. And that as up to then, I'd only wrestled in Texas one time, and it wasn't in Houston. I'd never wrestled in Houston. I'd wrestled in Dallas back in like 2016 or something like that. And so I got to get that. He informed me like an hour before the show that I was going to be in this triple threat match. So I did the match. And like after the match, the fans were chanting, "Please come back." They like threw a streamer. They were handing me beers and stuff like this. And then some of the higher ups in GCW thought that was like my home place or whatever. And when I informed them that I had never ever been there before, like that kind of sparked in their brain. And then when I did I came in to do the thing with Cardona in Vegas, that crowd was chanting Sam, and they were chanting, you know, Sam's gonna kill you. They had all kinds. They had all kinds of chants. And then, excuse me. And then recently in Dallas, I lost the match, but because I wrestled that scramble match, and I got pinned I took a Canadian Destroyer from Fuego del Sol and got pinned for the 3 count. I lost the match, and they cheered for Fuego. And then when he was leaving, like they came up to the ring and started beating on the ring and chanting Stackhouse. Like I got a louder chant than the person who won the match. And me and Fuego have been friends for. It's been because we came from the same area. He came from Oklahoma and Texas area, and that's another thing. Everybody was saying how congratulations on getting to wrestle Fuego, and I was like, if you go look on YouTube, there's matches of me and Fuego from 6 or 7 years ago. So, but I mean, like just that's another thing I wanted to talk about. Take the opportunity to talk about that, and if anybody hears it from down there, to thank them. Just the connection that I've gotten with the fans down in Houston and Dallas now, and I mean I've always had a connection with the fans here at home too. But I mean, that's the only reason that a guy like me, because I've always been told, you know, I don't look like a wrestler. Obviously, people take one look at me, and it's been hard for me to get booked because they look at me and they're like, "Oh God, get out of here." And that's also kind of the stigma I wrestle the way I do to try to change that, because I'm not the only big dude out here that can do these things. Like it's not as rare as it seems. Just no one puts the time into finding these guys, because they see them, they're like, "Oh God, this guy's huge. He probably just waddles around the ring and doesn't do much," you know. And also there's a place for those guys, because we need those dudes to just beat up people that can be nicknamed Mountain and you know, Freight Train and stuff like that. We need people like that, you know. Right. But like I just want, like, that's another thing, like I said, I go back to why I love wrestling so much. It can be for everybody. But like that's one thing that set me apart, I think, and I don't know what it is. It's just like, yeah, I can do cool moves and everything like that, but I've always been able to have a connection with the fans. Like I get messages from afterwards, like we hang out. Like, I mean, because at the end of the day, that's like I treat everybody the same. Like I don't talk down to them, like, because basically I am them. Because I guarantee you, like, just because I'm wrestling on a GCW show, if I'm not on that GCW show and they come back to Texas or Dallas, I'm going to be in the crowd watching. Because in Houston, the last time they were down there, I wasn't on the show, and I was in the crowd watching with the people who watch me wrestle. We were having a great time. And then the next night, I was wrestling in front of them. But I mean, because like, I don't understand the point of acting like no one's better than anybody. Like we're all here. Like we're all obviously here. The only reason that the fans, because that building in Houston, it can get hot in there, because that show back in July, I guarantee it was worse it was harder on the fans than it was the wrestlers, because we only had to be out there, 10 or 15 minutes. They were out there for like 3.5 or 4 hours, and it had to be 115 degrees in this building. So like when they have that dedication, you just gotta go out there and do it.
Right. So, is there anybody in particular that you have tried to model your style after, or do you take pieces from obviously the big guys, the Big Show, and the Mark Henrys, and the Great Khali's, and the Undertakers, or the Kanes, or the Rey Mysterios? Like, who do you pull your moves from?
Basically, I think someone referred to me one time as like a mix. If Samoa Joe and Rey Mysterio had a baby. I think somebody said that one time. But I mean, literally,
that's a pretty good compliment.
Yeah, I wasn't mad at it. I wasn't mad at it. If you take all of my moveset, it's basically Samoa Joe and Abyss, because I take a lot of inspiration from, like, obviously Bam Bam, Vader, because that's why I started doing the moonsault. I started doing the spinning heel kick because Umaga. To this day, one of my favorite matches that I've ever seen in my life was the last man standing match between Umaga and John Cena. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that match spoke to me so much, but like, that's why I started doing the spinning heel kick in the first place. Like I started out, when I started doing the Black Hole Slam, I started out like Umaga had him, where you catch him like this and swing him out and do it. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, like, I became a fan of Umaga back then. I missed that guy. Don't get me sorry on that. I missed that guy, but he could have been he was about to be a star for sure. But yeah, it's people like that. Like Bam Bam, like probably if I was to give you like a top 5, I guess, it'd be probably Bam Bam, Vader. Jeff Hardy was my very first favorite wrestler. And then Balls Mahoney from ECW for some, like, I don't know why, but that, like, I loved him like a lot. And then let me throw like a current guy in there. Probably. Do you know Willie Mack?
Oh,
yeah.
Very much. I love Willie Mack. Like I've gotten a lot of inspiration from him too, and even from Willie Mack, I've gotten a lot of inspiration from him too, because not only for like the wrestling moves he can do, being a bigger. I mean, obviously I'm bigger than him, but he's still a big dude, and he can do some pretty cool stuff. But he also started because he was a fan that went to the PWG shows, and then he was such a fan of that he got trained and ended up on the PWG shows. And I'm a sucker for stories like that, obviously. So that'd probably be my top 5 of inspiration. And like, I mean, I take stuff from. I mean, I watch a lot of wrestling, so I take little inspirations here and there from probably everywhere. It'd probably be impossible to track down all of them, but there's a lot.
That seems to be a common theme amongst the guys that we talk to, that a lot of them watch and study and try to, get inspirations and thoughts like that. So a lot of even though we've only done a few of these interviews, we get a lot of consistencies on that stuff.
You got to be a special type of person to do this. Like I said, it's not ballet like they say. So you got to be a special kind of person. You got to like it a lot.
Well, I thought it was interesting a while ago when you said that you basically had to trick yourself into hurting yourself, and I think that's a pretty on point type thing, right? I mean, because you're going to go through some pain, and you just basically got to
accept it.
It's going to hurt, but I'm going to do it because
you just got to think. Because I was watching a show that I was on last week, and there was probably like 550 people there, something like that, a bunch of screaming kids. And it was like the first show that these people had ever put on. It was at some small town in Texas. And like, it was like the promoter's wife or somebody related to him. And I kind of caught out of my ears. She was asking like, why do they do this? And then like, it was just like fake. Cause like right then the wrestlers in the match did a big move, and like that crowd went crazy. And I leaned over and I told her, and I was like, that's why. Because that crowd went crazy for what that guy did. And I looked at her, and I was like, that's why we do this. Because like, what other time can someone feel that? Like, obviously it's because that's another good thing about wrestling. Between the wrestling and fans, it's kind of like a give and take, because we give you something, and even if like the fans and stuff don't know it, you give us something.
Right.
Because when we can, because usually like those reactions are real. So that means that like what we're doing may be scripted and blah, blah, blah. But the emotions that it generates, 9 times out of 10 are real. And nobody can take that away from anybody. They can't, like the people who hate on the fans for being fans of wrestling, like they're just if you were to turn around, I feel like there'd be a lot less hate if you explained it to them like that. Like, ask them what they're passionate about. Because I guarantee you what they're passionate about, there's people who think that's stupid. But if you can relate to them, like you feel that way about wrestling, the same they feel about like underwater wood carving or something, whatever it is. Like, if you can explain to them and relate how that makes them feel, and that's how wrestling makes you feel, then there'd be a whole lot less like hate going around. No, I wish everybody would stop doing that, but perfect world situation, I guess.
100%. So, is there somebody that like Sam would really like to wrestle? Like
Calvin Tankman.
Who?
Calvin Tankman.
Calvin Tankman.
Trying to wrestle Calvin Tankman. It's crazy. Like, I made a list because like I've seen everybody do that, and I've never really made one. I made a list, and like some of it hadn't been announced yet, but like just all the way through March, like I'm gonna have to come up with another list. And that's not something that I would ever thought would happen. I didn't think that I would ever be able to like post on Facebook like, hey, and Twitter or whatever, like, hey, this is where I want to wrestle or who I want to wrestle, and then have promoters like message me and give me the date and tell me that I've got this match. Like,
nice.
My brain is just exploding, and
it happens twice. I'm not familiar with Calvin. Where's he out of?
I think he signed an MLW right now, so that's probably going to stop it from happening. But he's done GCW a few times, and he's around on the indies. Like, he does California and stuff like that. But he's another bigger dude, and I mean he can do some stuff that it doesn't even make any sense. So I think that we could have a pretty good match.
Yeah, MLW is hard for there's no real avenue for us to see that here in Kentucky unless we just like actively just go to like YouTube or something like that. can't watch it on TV or anything like that. And that's the downfall to the indie wrestling, is like there's so many great promotions out there, but you can't watch them. And
that's something that has set GCW apart too, because it's not hard to find. It's on Fight TV. I mean, you might have to pay $13 or $14 or whatever to watch it, but once you pay that, you've got that show forever.
Right.
You know, and plus they do free shows on YouTube sometimes. You know, like it's out there, and that's something that a lot of the indie fans or indie places could mimic too. You know,
right.
Excuse me, got too excited.
Well, you know, and
since all this stuff's been happening to me, everybody's asking how it's happening. And I was like, the internet, you got to get on the internet. There's no reason why, like, there's probably, just yesterday was Saturday, so there's probably 500 indie shows in this country, but probably only 10% of them were on the have been put on the internet. And that's crazy, because you like wrestling, you have to, like, wrestling just like anything else. We need to adapt, and it's going to, like, if you don't have an online presence right at this time, you're not going to be successful. Because now, why would someone like go to just trust you and come to your show if you don't have anything on the internet that they can watch first? Because now it, like, there's stuff that they can check out before. Now if you see some random place you want to go to, Google, and you can see pictures, videos, probably TikToks people have posted while they were there, so you can map out the whole place, get the whole vibe, see everything. So as wrestling companies, as independents, you need to do that. You need to have a YouTube channel, TikTok, Twitch, whatever it is that you want to put into that, like, people can go there and they can be like, oh snap, this guy has so and so. I've seen him on some other place. Now I'm going to go. Now you get them there, and then it's your job to put on a good show to get them coming back. But like, people, we just need to, you know, adapt to this 2022.
Well, and you know, you were talking about promotions doing that. I think, especially during the COVID time, it's been important for wrestlers themselves to build a social media presence. I mean, you look at what's his name, John? Danhausen has done.
Sure. Yep.
I mean, he's turned himself into a megastar just off of social media.
I just watched his interview. What's that guy's name? He's got like 3 names. It does all the Van Vliet. What's it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it Chris Van Vliet?
Chris, yeah. I watched Danhausen's interview with him that he did with him, and he does it like out of character and stuff. It was pretty like eye opening, because he talks about that, how it's basically because of Twitter that he is where he's at right now, because he was talking about how he was basically ready to quit.
Yeah,
like he was about to retire, and then his social media started to blow up, and now this is what he does.
Well, and I mean, that's kind of what happened to you. You started posting some of your stuff on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok, and people are like, wow, like, hey, we need a big guy on our card. This guy can work. Let's bring him in.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Because I tell people all the time, that's why I say all the time, I'm just happy to be involved, because all it took, and I've been saying that for years. It's just like any other entertainment, because at the end of the day, it's an entertainment thing. It's just like music. Like there's musical artists out here that have been putting out bangers for years, and all it takes is that one person to hear it, and then boom, a week later they're on the radio. It's the same thing with wrestling. You could be wrestling in front of 2 people, but if one of those 2 people is the right person, boom, a month later you're in front of 5,000 or 500 people or 1,000 people in Las Vegas wrestling Matt Cardona. So, you know, that's how it is nowadays, and people need to get on that, because, like I said, there's guys out here absolutely killing themselves and not getting discovered. And it's the sad. I mean, a lot of times it's the saddest thing, because, like I said, there's guys out here that deserve it a whole lot more than me. I just got lucky.
Yeah. Well, and you know, social media, there's a trick to it, right? And it's not easy. Obviously, we know this because we've been going at this since July, and we're trying to grow the podcast and stuff like that. And you know, we never really. I mean, we had always dreamed of doing interviews. I'll be honest with you. We didn't think it would be as easy to get people to interview as what it's been. The majority of the people.
I'm not. If anybody asks me, I'm not telling anybody no. I'll talk about wrestling until I'm blue in the face.
Well, and you know,
and most of the indie wrestlers are that way, because, like I said, we're just, at the end of the day, if you're an indie wrestler, if you're a wrestler, period, chances are you're a huge wrestling fan, because, like I said, you have to have a certain mindset to get in the ring and do this stuff anyways, because it's not natural.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing, like that's why this is a two-way street, right? Corner to corner we want to be a successful podcast.
Oh, for sure.
But in the same sense, we want Sam Stackhouse to tell his story. So if Sam Stackhouse's fans are out there looking for Sam Stackhouse stuff,
mm-hmm.
then they're going to find an interview on YouTube with Sam Stackhouse and From
Exactly.
Corner. And hopefully that intrigues people to go, wow, this is really cool. Maybe I'll check out some of their other interviews or maybe check out their podcast, you know. And that helps.
Of that, I was just talking about that Chris Van Vliet guy. That's why I watch all his videos now.
Yeah.
Because it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. He did an interview with Rhino. And I wanted to watch it because Rhino's one of my favorites too. So I saw that and I watched that. And now I watched almost all of the interviews he does. And it was just because that one person was on there. So I understand. Yeah.
That's the way it works with YouTube. I mean, if you find the niche or you find something that you like, people are going to subscribe to it and they're going to watch every time. I mean, that's the thing. We have some diehard listeners for our podcast that 5 minutes after the show, after they've listened to the show, they're texting us and messaging us, telling us what they thought about the show. Yeah. So that's neat. So, Neil, did you have any other questions before we get to the final wrap-up question?
I did, actually. I wanted to know what has been, I mean, obviously you talked about wrestling down in Houston. You talk about wrestling down in Vegas. What has been, up until this point, your favorite, and it may not have been in front of that many people, and maybe nobody knows about, what was your favorite place to wrestle, and who was your favorite opponent to wrestle?
We'll say like my favorite match up to this point, like that got me in the feels was me and my best friend Drake. I was the best man at his wedding, he was the best man at my wedding, and like he's the godfather of my daughter. And then the jerk, after he cut a surprise promo after the last show I wrestled with him and informed me that his wife's having their daughter next month, and then he decided in front of a crowd was the time to inform me that I was going to be the godfather of his daughter too. So that was fun. But we had a match back in May of last year, and it was like a Monsters Ball match, and we went through the trouble of like getting the okay from Abyss to have the name it Monsters Ball and everything, because we like mounted his feud. Like, because we won, I got the plaque right there. We were like tag team of the year, but then he turned on me and and then COVID happened, but we still we picked up the feud back up when we could run shows and stuff again. And we had it was about a 40-minute Monsters Ball match, but like the emotion that the crowd had and like the emotion that we had in there and stuff, and like everything just clicked, everything worked like it was supposed to. There was even things that happened that weren't planned that just worked in our favor and everything like that. And it was also on a show that, if I'm being honest, like they didn't expect us to be the best match, and they didn't because there was another more match with better well-known people around Oklahoma on it or whatever. But we ended up we stole the show, but we stole the show on like more of an emotional level too. Cause I still get anytime I do a show in Oklahoma now, people still talk about that match. And his name's Drake Gallows, by the way. Go follow him. Gallows. He's cool. But he's been my friend for, the first time I saw him wrestle, I was still training, and he was using his brother's wrestling license to wrestle because he wasn't even old. He was on like 16 or 17 at the time, so he wasn't even old enough to be wrestling. But he was using his brother's wrestling license to even get to wrestle. So, and we've been friends since that. I was back in 2009, so we've been friends since then. And because like I said, my biggest thing about this is making me feel, or making other people feel the way the wrestling has made me feel. And people have told me that we put him, there was people crying at one point and stuff in the match. So and just stuff so that match is always going to stick out to me. I feel like it's that's the best. That's the story I'm proudest of. It meant the most because I was in there with someone who in real life, if wrestling stopped today, he would still be my best friend tomorrow without wrestling. So that meant a lot. My wife was involved in the match, and that's another thing. I'll always be thankful to wrestling, because if it wasn't for wrestling, I wouldn't have my wife or daughter. Because my wife, I did a random show in now the town I live in, and the promoter put her with me as my manager, and that was the first time we met. And now we've been married we had our 5-year anniversary a few months ago now, and we have a 6-year-old daughter, and that's all because of wrestling. Nice. So that's another reason why I get so giddy in talking about wrestling, because wrestling, literally everything that is good and that I love in my life is because of wrestling. All the good feelings I have is when I get to go out there and do my thing, and everything goes off great. All the worst parts of my life have been because of wrestling too, whether it's injuries or me not thinking that I'm doing the right thing, or I'm not being and I hate the whole term I'm not being used right, but I've also never been like outward about like I don't make a big fit. I'll just go where I just do what's best for what I think is best. But yeah, I mean, back to answer your question, to sum it all up, that was my favorite. It was at OKX, which was a show. It was Oklahoma exclusive, and there was only supposed to be one, and it was 2 years ago, and then they did another one. But it was basically where like it was for everybody in Oklahoma. So it wasn't just like people that wrestled just in Tulsa or just in Oklahoma City or just in like way down south Oklahoma. And it was like just basically just a show for Oklahoma dream matches. And we stole that show. So that was probably one of the best. But I mean, obviously the biggest moments have been the GCW stuff, because like I'm so I can't tell you how thankful I am for Brett Lauderdale for giving me the opportunity to show that I don't just belong here, like I can keep up with other people. Like I'm not just another big dude, like he's giving me that opportunity, and I'll never be able to repay for that. So that's awesome.
Nice.
Well, I am definitely excited to see the path of Sam Stackhouse over the coming years, for sure. We've
hopefully I don't disappoint you.
Neil, I'm thinking that when we talk to the Mr. Hawks from Wrestlecade in a little bit, we need to ask for Sam Stackhouse to be at Wrestlecade this year.
I agree.
I'm trying. Isn't Al Snow's or isn't OVW there by you? Or is that by you guys?
OVW's in Louisville, which is about an hour and 15 minutes away.
I've been talking about coming there, so if I do, I'll let you know.
We have we've got 3 people from OVW lined up for interviews in the coming weeks. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, one of the guys I wrestled in that triple threat at GCW, Facade, he's there, and I've been talking to him about.
Well, Sam, I make you a promise that if you come up to Louisville and wrestle, From Corner to Corner guys will be in the audience cheering you on, buddy.
This is recorded. This is recorded.
Hey, and he's not lying. I mean, we're really working towards trying to get we're trying to get in, good with OVW. We really hope to do some of these interviews with them here in the next little bit, because I mean that's kind of our backyard indie promotion.
For sure,
and
yeah.
If we're gonna promote indie wrestlers and we're gonna be a part of this, then OVW needs to be a part of our.
Definitely, and there's so much history there and stuff too. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So Sam, final question we'll ask, and then we'll wrap it up. We in our podcast, what we do 2 different shows on our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We do, like, on Saturdays, we do like a fantasy booking thing where we go back and we rewrite big moments in history, right?
Awesome.
No right or wrong to it. It's just like this past week's show was, we went back and looked to see if Ric Flair had not left WCW and went to the WWF, what would WCW had look like after that? So that was what our show.
I've listened to that. That sounds pretty awesome.
You being a wrestling fan, I honestly think that you would like our podcast.
That sounds pretty, because I do that in my own head all the time. So.
And then on Wednesdays, we do what we call the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. So we put random topics on a wheel, and we spin a wheel, and then we do our own Mount Rushmore of whatever it is. For a long time, for the first 25 shows, we did wrestling topics. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been just doing some random other stuff. But we did a top 50, and it ultimately ended with our ultimate Mount Rushmore of wrestling. So kind of our thing that we do with the guests that we have on the show is, you're a fan. You've been watching for a long time. Who's your Mount Rushmore of wrestling? And it doesn't have to be someone that's specific to you. It's just like, if you think back, who was your 4 iconic guys that wrestling wouldn't be the same without?
Well, that's like the same to me, or just wouldn't be wrestling.
However you want it. If it's you or wrestling, however you want to do it.
Dang, that's tough. Let me see here. Obviously, I'm gonna put The Rock on there, because Stone Cold. It's just gonna be a bunch of like Attitude Era guys, because that's what I grew up in.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I'll just do my personal one. It would be The Rock because he's always been my favorite. Jeff Hardy was my first favorite wrestler, and then Vader because who are him or Bam Bam? I'm gonna say Vader. And then is there 4 or 5 on Mount Rushmore? Four. Dang. Then I'm gonna say Vince McMahon because if it wasn't for Vince McMahon, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation because wrestling would have died a long time ago. Probably.
Vincent Kennedy McMahon has made the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. He was on Neil's Mount Rushmore of wrestling as a heel. He's one. He's probably one of the best heels ever in the business.
In my opinion, he's the greatest heel in professional wrestling.
100%.
But you are 1,000% right, Sam, when you say that, and we have talked about it many times on our show. Professional wrestling, whether it be indie, WWE, AEW, whatever you want to say, it doesn't exist today without Vince McMahon. It just doesn't, because it would have died if WrestleMania wouldn't work. Yeah. Professional wrestling would have died, and we would have never known because it would have never gotten to a national broadcast.
Exactly. Yeah, he mainstream when he started doing WrestleMania and bringing in Christy Lauper and all the other celebrities and stuff like that. He made it mainstream, and especially when he had wrestlers celebrities wrestle and stuff like that. Yep. I mean, because what was it 2 years ago when Bad Bunny or whatever was on Mania? Yep. That was the best celebrity match I've ever seen in my life,
and he was really good.
Yeah, and I guarantee there was people who hadn't watched wrestling before that watched just because he was on it, and if maybe 10% of them kept watching after that, then it was worth it. Right. So if it was, and that's all Vince's strategy. I mean, he's the first one to do any of that stuff.
Yeah. So
he mainstreamed it. So if it wasn't for him, none of us would be around here.
So Sam, before we close out, tell our listeners and our viewers where they can find Sam Stackhouse on social media. I'm on Sam Stackhouse on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. I got all of them. We're working on this TikTok right now. We're almost 10,000.
Nice.
We got I think last time I looked, I was 9,400 and something. So we're getting there. And before that it's funny because the before I wrestled at that first show in GCW back in July, I had 240 followers.
Wow.
And now I'm almost at 10,000. So and the Twitter's blowing up. Ever since Matt Cardona followed me and shares my stuff on Twitter now. So that's helped out a lot on there. So you can follow me on anywhere. My DMs are always open. If you ever want to talk about wrestling, anything like that, just let me know where you want to see me. If you have any local feds or anything, send them my way.
Fantastic. Well, Sam, I know it's late, and we appreciate you coming on and spending time with us. It's obvious that you have a passion and a love for professional wrestling, and that right there makes us a fan of you for sure.
Well, yeah, I have to be at work in 6 hours, and I'm still up talking about wrestling, so that's how much I love wrestling.
That's awesome. Well, we'll let you go, and I have a feeling this won't be the last time that we get to talk. So
I hope not.
We look forward to having you on again, and maybe we get you up here to OVW for sure.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir. Awesome. Thank you,
Sam. We thank you again, and we look forward to talk to you the next time.
Sure.
Stay safe, friends.
Yeah.